morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to welcome you all to this 2023 edition of the Covenant of Mayors Investment Forum, Energy Efficiency Finance Marketplace, to those in the room as well as those following the event online. Well, my name is Paloma Garrote, and I'm the Director of the European Climate Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency, also known as CINEA. CINEA is co-organizing this event together with the European Commission, particularly with the Directorate-General for Energy and the Directorate-General for Climate Action, and also in collaboration with the Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy Europe Office. The Covenant of Mayors Investment Forum is the flagship initiative of our clean energy transition activities. Today's forum features many pioneer initiatives and solutions that help accelerate the clean energy transition and climate adaptation at local level. Many of these initiatives have been supported by programs financed by the European Union, such as the LIFE program and also in the past, the Horizon 2020. We also at CINEA, we have a service which is called Green Assist, which is an advisory service free of charge, which will help investors to implement their green investments, but also will help them to reduce their environment carbon footprint. Today's event comes in a very timely as Europe is increasing its ambition on energy policy, with the goals of accelerating the energy transition, boosting the European Union's security of supply, and reducing dependency from outside. Cities, municipalities, and regions play an important role in accelerating the energy and climate action transitions needed to contribute to the European Union goals. You need to move your cities and municipalities' decarbonization plans towards implementation now. CINEA proudly supports you, cities and regions, in this endeavor and in accelerating this transition. We know that the challenges are huge. Today, we have a number of speakers who will guide us and introduce us to the next sessions that we'll have later on. Vandenberghe from DG Klima and Hans van Steen from DG Ener, who will take the floor in a moment, will surely echo these elements and share with you more details on how the European Union and its cities and regions can respond to these challenges. An equally important aspect for accelerating the clean energy transition and for fighting against climate change is the mobilization of investments and its funding for both public and private organizations. In this context, we will listen to Mr. José Antonio Álvarez, Vice Chair at Banco Santander. And finally, you will also hear from Josko Klisovic, President of the City Assembly of the City of Zagreb and member of the European Committee of the Regions, who I hope he will come here very soon. His flight has been delayed, but he arrived already in the airport 20 minutes ago, so we are expecting him any minute. And he will share with us the good examples of local action that support the clean energy transition and climate change adaptation and mitigation. I am very glad to see the continued interest of participants in this forum and also the many faces joining us today in person to learn about these successful examples. Your interest shows the importance of having first-hand learning experience amongst peers and of networking, which is an element of great importance in this event. Before I pass the floor to our distinguished speakers, I would like therefore to invite you to make the most of this forum, Learn from successful projects and initiatives that contribute to financing for sustainable energy and climate adaptation solutions. Network amongst your peers and take home plenty of ideas that could be replicated in your areas. Of course, maybe you have already seen, I also invite you to visit the various stands that you can find in the welcome area during the breaks. So without further introduction, I would like now to turn to our speakers, and I would like to invite Kurt Vandenberghe, Director-General of Climate Action, to be with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paloma. Dear mayors, councillors, local leaders, friends of cities, great to have you here today. When I came in the welcome area, I sensed a lot of energy, clean energy among you, and that's exactly what we need because the local authorities are for us a key ally in realizing our 2050 goals, which have been laid down in a European climate law that is to become climate neutral and climate resilient by 2050. The goal is clear. Now we need to work on how to best get there. And realizing these goals is more than simply cutting emissions. It is really about changing the way we live and work, the way we eat and heat our buildings and increasingly cool our buildings as well, the way we move in and between cities, and the way we also entertain ourselves. So it is much more than climate, than energy policy. It's also about the circular economy and about protecting our nature. As you may know, we now have more or less agreed at European level all the legislation that is needed to get to our 2030 target of reducing emissions by at least 55%. We will, if we implement everything well, we will overachieve this and achieve a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions of 57%. What is important now is that we stay the course and we fight climate change and adapt to the reality of a boiling planet, as President von der Leyen said in her State of the Union speech, because we see that climate change is increasingly affecting everyone, everywhere, in Europe and across the world. So what matters for us, and I'm very happy that CINEA has organized this forum today and that I'm here together with Hans from DG Ener, because we work very much hand in hand on these objectives. What matters is that we fight climate change by implementing what has been agreed at European level. So for us, the big agenda ahead is implementation of everything that our political leaders have agreed. Part of that implementation work are the national energy and climate plans that we are getting from member states. We still miss 11 national plans from member states, which is not making our life very easy, because we need to come with recommendations in December so that member states finalize their plans by mid next year. Again, we do this jointly with DG Energy. And there I would love to see a very important role for cities as well, in how cities can help us implement these ambitious goals at European level. And part of the implementation effort is, of course, to mobilize investment. We need massive investment in the years to come. That's also why we work with the European Investment Bank and with many other banks across Europe. Very happy to see the representation of some banks here today. The investment forum is of capital importance in this. And I was glad to see on the program today that there are many examples, practical examples, of how also in a city context investments are being mobilized. And when we talk about investments, obviously the time frame of these investments often go beyond a couple of years. So we need to give predictability to investors, both on public and the private side. And that's why we already start working on the climate target for 2040 to give a perspective of more than 5 years, going beyond 2030. Also there we will stay the course. We have heard from our science boards that the target should be between 90 and 95% greenhouse gas reduction by 2040 in light of the shrinking carbon budget that we will have in those decades. And our new climate commissioner, as you may have heard in his hearing, has said that he will propose a target of at least 90% for 2040. So we're now currently working on the impact assessment, again, jointly with DG Energy. It's as if we are in bed with DG Energy these days, which is very good. So in the impact assessment, we will be looking at how to ensure a socially just transition in going to that target, how, again, to mobilize the investments that are needed, what are sectoral pathways for decarbonizing different sectors of our economy, but very importantly also, we will look at how we can further enhance and promote the circular economy, better using all the resources and materials we have in our economy, natural resources, but also the solid resources, as well as CO2 as a resource that we increasingly have to capture, store, and use. And very interestingly, and that's also very important for city authorities, we will look at the potential for changing consumer behavior, because we see in our modeling that the more consumers change their behavior in what they eat or how they move or how they shop, for example, that can reduce quite significantly the costs of the transition. And there I also see the cities as laboratories of experimentation for solutions that can help us all together in achieving these goals and maybe come up with solutions that can then be replicated by other cities in Europe, but also across the world. And that's the other dimension of our work, is the international outreach. Europe represents 7% of global CO2 emissions. So we need to get the other 93% on board. That's why we are working very hard towards the COP28 that is coming up in December. And as you may know, also there the role of cities will become very prominent because the COP presidency, Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, has decided to organize a day of subnational actors, as cities are called at the international level, to discuss with city mayors and leaders how we can work together at global level with cities on our climate and energy goals. But as we do this and as we fight climate change, we obviously also need to be increasingly prepared for the physical aspects, the physical impacts of climate change, which are increasingly compounding other challenges, such as biodiversity, erosion, or the effects of the geopolitical tensions that we increasingly face. We have a European climate adaptation strategy from 2021, which gives a solid framework for working on adaptation and preparedness. Member states are now updating their risk assessments. We have reported on progress not later than yesterday in our Climate Action Progress report. But what we see is that we face a big protection gap. Many of the risks that we will be facing in the years and decades ahead are not protected by some form of assurance or other form of protection. So that's why we are working on a European Union climate risk assessment, where for the first time, in a systematic manner, we will be identifying all the risks, the priority risks that Europe will face in the future from climate change, so that we can start identifying who should be the risk owner and how do we start addressing and managing these risks. And again, the role of cities in that will be very, very important. Climate resilience, building climate resilience and preparedness is not just about managing these risks so that we avoid or minimize damage and disruption, but it's also about better urban planning. It's about renovating entire districts of cities. It's about improving health, better different mobility, and installing a dynamic in local communities to work together towards achieving these goals. So what we will want to do together with you, and I hope that also today this will be a subject of debate among you, is to shift the perspective in climate adaptation from being a cost that we need to avoid to an investment opportunity for territories across the European Union. And in that, we would like to prioritize the nature-based solutions. And we would like to say that nature-based solutions should come first wherever they are the most cost-efficient. And in this way, we also make a link with the nature restoration law that is in the final stages of negotiation between Council and Parliament, and which obviously is of very great relevance for cities and city leaders. And as you may know, at the European level, we have a couple of initiatives that brings together the European level with cities and regions. We have the 100 or more than 100 smart climate neutral cities mission in Horizon Europe. We also have the mission on adaptation, where we work with more than 300 regions now to exchange best practices and identify investment opportunities, as well as developing solutions for enhancing our climate resilience. These initiatives, we will continue to progress them because they are very important, not only so that we learn from each other, but also that the European level knows what is happening, all the good things that are happening at the local level, and so that we can then also gear up our instruments, budgetary and regulatory, at European level to help you in this endeavor. I would want to conclude by again thanking CINEA for organizing this forum today and wishing you a great, dynamic, inspirational event today. We need you. We're in this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kurt, for enlightening us this morning, for giving us this overall view of the legislation, but also about the strategies, the action that the European Commission is taking in order to help to reach this ambition goal already envisaged in the Fit for 55 package legislation to bring, the greenhouse emissions down and to achieve our targets by already 2030, but also beyond. It's also important, as you say, to focus on implementation, on tackling certain challenges and risks that we will all have, to focus on our long-term targets in order that we will be able to support, investment decisions, take the best ones, and finally to achieve, our industrial decarbonization. I will now would like to call Hans van Steen to come here, who will give us also the perspective on the energy policy. Thank you, Hans.
Thank you very much, Paloma, and good morning to all of you, distinguished guests. It's really a great pleasure for me to be here, replacing my Director-General, who unfortunately could not make it, but I was very happy when I was told yesterday that I had to come here, because it's not the first time that I've been talking to this forum, and it's always a pleasure to see you and have a possibility to exchange with you, because at the end of the day, you have a super critical important role in the energy transition, which is, of course, what we are very much focusing on these days. I would like, first of all, also to thank CINEA for organizing this again, and also the colleagues from the Commission who have been working hard to put this event together with CINEA. The points that I would like to cover with you this morning is essentially I would like to just give you a quick update on where we are when it comes to energy and energy efficiency from the regulatory point of view. I would like to say a few words about the role of cities in implementing. I very much agree with what Kurt said, that we are now looking at implementing as one of the really critical elements of moving forward. And here, of course, cities have a key role. And thirdly, I would like to say also a few words about financing, since this is a finance forum. Today's forum is really important as we move forward towards our key objective of climate neutrality by the middle of this century. But I will also be very honest with you and say that the last couple of years from an energy perspective have been extremely challenging, as you will certainly all know. We've seen an invasion of Ukraine by Russia. We've seen increasing geopolitical tensions in Europe right at our doorstep, including in these last few days, and we've seen the impact and the repercussions this have had on our energy systems. We have done a lot in the EU from the Commission side, together with the Member States, the European Parliament, and everybody else, to try and deal with that situation. I think we have to a very large extent managed. Certainly, we are going into this winter much better prepared than we were last winter, and last winter we did not have situations of energy shortages or blackouts, as some people were worried we might have. The long-term solution to dealing with these energy challenges is, of course, the energy transition, to accelerate it and to move swiftly and effectively forward. And essentially what this means is more renewable energy replacing fossil fuels and more energy efficiency, and that's of course the very topic of today's meeting. So if we're trying to zoom in a little bit on energy efficiency, I think there is actually a lot happening also on the regulatory front. First of all, of course, now we have an agreement, an adoption of the on energy efficiency directive. It entered into force actually on the 10th of October. We have an overall target for the EU of 11.7% reduction of energy by 2030. 2030 is very soon. I think I don't have to remind you. And those 11.7% are, of course, compared to 2020. This is a new way of calculating energy efficiency, but actually quite an ambitious target. This directive places the energy efficiency first principle at the center. It has to be reflected in policy, in planning, in everything to do with investments, but also in public procurement, including at the local level, including for buildings and works and so on and so forth. We also have now clear indications why the public sector is well placed to lead by example here, and we have specific targets for renovation also of public buildings, for example. Very, very important. And I'll come back to that in a moment because we also have a directive specifically on buildings. There are also new requirements for heating and cooling for municipalities more than 45,000 inhabitants. And we here identify the most resource and cost-effective solutions to meet demand and to meet it in the best possible way. It also provides a revised definition of efficient district heating and cooling. From our perspective, this is something which is a little bit underestimated in many places in the EU today. The second point I would like to mention in terms of legislative developments is the Renewable Energy Directive. It is now agreed. We have a target of 42% share of renewable energy by 2030 in the overall EU mix, slightly less than what we had proposed in the Recover EU package from the Commission, where we had proposed 45%, but the co-legislators actually agreed that this 42.5%, which is in the text, is with a view to actually going higher than that, and 45% is specifically mentioned. It also sets specific objectives for buildings, for industry, for transport, heating and cooling, and these are all central to our urban economies. And then the third legislative initiative that I would like to mention today here is the energy performance of buildings, the EPBD directive. Again, a very important piece of legislation at EU level. We're now revising this directive to make it more efficient, and for the first time we are including minimum energy performance standards in EU legislation for the worst performing buildings. We follow up from the renovation wave that many of you will remember, and we will now create legislation that really enforces this and makes us have building renovation plans prepared by member states. And of course, in doing these, the member states will need to consult you, local authorities, in drawing up these plans. They should really, again, focus on phasing out fossil fuels because, for example, in heating, we still have something like 75% fossil fuels in the EU. And if we are to get rid of that quickly, that sector is absolutely critical. This is now at the very last stages of the negotiations in the European Parliament and in the Council, and we're hoping for an agreement still this year. I think all of these three directives point to important aspects for property owners and for investors. For example, in terms of having the right staff, have people with the right skills, access to energy services for all. Energy services is really important here, and also building-related data and information. And I'm looking at Paloma here, who's moving nervously. Very good. I will try and speed up. Of course, I wanted to say a few words also about the role of cities in the energy transition. You are really those who are closest to the citizens, and therefore you are very well placed to make a key contribution through regulations at local level, through urban design, in a way that promotes a resource and efficient, renewable, intensive, and smarter energy system. You are also very close in terms of dealing with important issues such as energy poverty. The EU has a lot of financing available to help you do that. Of course, the cohesion funds, but also the recovery and resilience facility put in place after the COVID pandemic. And a lot of this money can actually help you in the local communities to finance a lot of the things that needs doing. There are quite a number of very important, so what shall we call them, initiatives in this area, such as the ELENA facility, the Smart Cities Marketplace, the LIFE program with the clean energy transition, and of course the Covenant of Mayors that are at the center of this event here today. The public money that we have should use to leverage private investments. That's why financing is such a critically important thing. Without a very strong role of private financing, the transition, in our view, simply will not and cannot happen. And some of the key drivers here are a combination of policies that focus on the quantity and the quality of green finance available, and I think we will hear from our speaker from Banco Santander on that in a moment as well. We need to use EU and national funds appropriately and efficiently. We need to avoid duplication, of course, and we need to look at the availability of financial packages that are comprehensive in combining grants and technical assistance instruments. Before I conclude, I would like just to mention a word about the European Energy Efficiency Financing Coalition, which is the new name for what used to be called EFIC. It was announced in our Repower EU strategy. It will bring together financial institutions, the Commission's member states, to look into mobilizing private financing for investments in energy efficiency, including by creating national hubs to get closer to the local and regional levels. Again, the role of local and regional actors here is absolutely essential. In the meantime, today's forum is a great opportunity to learn from the past and current projects, to share information, experiences, and ideas. It's also a very good platform to discuss common challenges on financing, and I think there's a fantastic opportunity to do a lot of networking at the event. And of course, colleagues of mine from the Commission will be here to help you and to discuss these things with you as well. So really to conclude, and I see Paloma moving even more nervously, I think implementing the clean energy transition in Europe requires strongly motivated and innovative cities and local communities that are well connected to financial institutions and that work in networks with national governments as well as with the EU. That's why today is such an important opportunity to do exactly that. And I would again like to thank you for coming, for your commitment, your continued commitment. And I would like to wish you enriching and productive discussions throughout the day. And I look forward to meeting many of you again at the high-level conference of mayors organized by the Belgian presidency on the 15th of March next year. Thank you very much for listening also to me, and have a really nice day. Thank you.
Well, Kurt is leaving us. He has another appointment, but I would like just to thank you again for giving your time already early this morning. So thank you, Hans, for this interesting overview of the policy update, which outlines the increased ambition of the European Union targets and the need to mobilize private and public investment. As you highlight, the role of the public sector is crucial in this context, with some dedicated obligations. In particular, the local actors are called to take action by setting district heating and cooling plans under the Energy Efficiency Directive. But as you mentioned, it's also crucial that towns and cities, especially, I would say myself, on the small and middle size, are supported, but also from different perspectives, but also financially. And that's why this brings me to my third speaker of today, José Antonio Álvarez, Vice Chair at Banco Santander, who will tell us more of how, private financing institutions can help in this transition.
Thank you, Paloma. Thank you, CINEA. And good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure, a real pleasure to be here this morning with you. I'm not I'm a practitioner. We are in the side of, has been said that when we talk about climate change and investments related with climate change, we measure in trillions. We don't use even billions, we use trillions. That means the first idea that comes to my mind when we speak about this is how to finance it. And to finance it, there is another word that comes to my mind, that is growth. In order to finance the energy transition, we need growth in the general economy. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to finance it. Well, so to have growth, we need to take care of a delicate balance between the transition period. Yeah? So not to damage the growth, because if we damage significantly the growth, we face more difficulties in funding the growth, in the capacity to fund the transition. So the second point that comes to my mind is we need to align everyone else, including governments. The governments, the first, incentivizing the having clear plans and policies that support and push ahead all the in line with the Commission targets that, well, my colleagues, both Carl and Hans, explain here. So we need to help people to go green. And third, don't forget what the efficiency. We need to be able to produce one unit of product with less energy intensity. That's critical in the same time, so those are the challenges we face. We as a banks, this is a very interesting forum to me, yeah? So because we as a banks, we've been, particularly Santander, we've been involved in renewable energy from the last 25 years, yeah? So, and we know how to arrange and to fund the big projects, yeah? The big solar, wind, onshore and offshore projects. We know how to do this, yeah? And there is a market for this. This is the good news. So it's true that the banks, normally we work in the project while the construction is going on, and we distribute all these investments to the market, to other players, normally pension funds, insurance companies, once the project is finished and is starting to produce energy. This is working pretty well. This is the good news. So there is no problems there. I will mention the problems we find when we try to fund those kind of projects. But I'm going to elaborate in the second part of my speech about the retail. And retail is a bit more difficult. We are just starting, and retail is much more related with municipalities and with regions. So I'm not going to elaborate about the big projects. Other day, if you want, we speak about this problem, but we're going to focus more in two specific topics, that is energy efficiency in buildings and clean mobility, that are topics that we are starting to work on these fields, and we are finding some problems that I will mention very briefly. So let me do a few words about the challenge of Europe. Europe faces security of supply challenge today. This is one of the first topics that comes to my mind. The second is the affordability. Affordability is important, not because the competitiveness. Energy, depends what type of energy, may cost as much as the double than it costs in the States. And this is a competitiveness problem for Europe. And we need to take a look to this. And we face the decarbonization problem that with the targets the Commission has established and that really are the forefront of the world. All three elements are interconnected, are not isolated. Let me do, the problems we find when we try to go along and fund this type of projects. The first one is permitting. Permitting is a problem. It takes too long. So, and this is a pity. We need to work on this. Supply chain issues has been a problem. Less so now, but still a problem. And the dependence on third-party providers. This is another problem. Connection, the grids. Rethink the grids, because some projects that are good in itself maybe not as good as when you take into account the connection with the grid. And you may produce energy for nothing, yeah, because the connection is poor or you cannot do the connection. Well, there's a missing infrastructure still for the new system. Ammonia terminals are not yet there, so these kind of things. And dependence of the third parties. Depending on third parties on energy, you can say Europe has been dependent on third parties on energy all the history. But, well, when you are designing a new system, and we have seen what the problems in the supply chains, probably is better to gain some, let's call, independence in energy. Operating the system is also with renewable energy has also problems. Intermittency is a problem. Synchronity issues. Well, you want to build a plant that is work with renewables, you need to have at the same time the renewable energy available there, and the synchronity is not always there. Yeah, so I mentioned also before the problems we have there, and technical issues operating the new system. Yeah, so still we are on the learning curve in plenty of new technologies. So those are the big topics. Let me to focus now in the more retail topics that probably are closer to your role, your public role as municipalities and regions. This is the energy efficiency in buildings and our capacity to fund this. Yeah? So because the building sector is extremely important. So in some metrics, if you take a broad scope from construction, heating, cooling, and lighting, buildings may represent up to 1/3 of the energy consumption and emissions. And this is a large number. On the other side, when you look at the investments in real estate compared to GDP, normally they move between 4 and 8% or 9%. So it's important for the growth point of view, and it's also important from the emissions point of view. So it's a critical sector on this. This sector has some peculiarities that we need to address. So the first one is not about new buildings. Basically, in Europe, it's about second-hand buildings. So this means that the certifications are critical. The certifications are not homogeneous right now across Europe. It would be great to have homogeneous certification across Europe in order to compare apples with apples. Yeah? So I'm facilitating our work when we try to address or to try to finance this renovation. The second aspect is the market, the ownership is highly fragmented. And how the property is established is not the same everywhere. You have plenty of condominiums that from a bank point of view are difficult to match, believe me. So to lend to a condominium is difficult, but we have plenty of condominiums. We have other ways other properties that are on one owner, that's easy to find, as long as the owners want to do so. So it's important to incentivize the owners to do so. We are ready to fund the owners, but we cannot force the owners to do that. So someone else, and it's what I said, the governments need to have a role here. Yeah? For this, we are developing products for this kind of needs, for renovation, and renovation of different elements and aspects of the buildings. But we need a rule book, how to fund this, and what are the goals that we should achieve, and in which period of time, and all these things. The level of execution of next generation funds still pending. This is a critical factor, in my view, to apply to this purpose. Yes, if you apply to this purpose, it facilitates the capacity to fund this. So I'm optimistic on finding the ways to fund this. And the banks will have capillarity to provide the funds. So this is not a problem as long as we have a project that works. And the question is how to make the projects work. Let me to focus on the other topic that is very much in your important for the cities and regions, is the clean mobility. Charging stations still a problem. Yeah. So the demand for EVs is increasing, but charging, I am an owner of an EV, and I have, when I take my mobile, I got like 10 apps of 10 different charging stations. I don't have a space in my mobile for more apps for different charging stations. There's a problem. My mobile is not going to grow. So we need to do something, yeah? So in order well, this is a problem. So simple problems that are not convenient and prevent people to buy EVs and drive EVs. And the customer experience in charging stations is not a great one, to be honest, yeah? So maintenance is poor. So we have a problem here. So the good side of this, we are funding EV vehicles. We are funding this year 200,000 EV vehicles across Europe. So that is a large number, and it's growing a lot. At the beginning, we found some problems. One of the problems is the residual value in the leases. But we are funding solutions for this, along with OEMs. Naturally, it's a cooperation between OEMs and the banks. The OEMs need to guarantee that the life of the battery goes beyond whatever number you want to put. Yeah. So, with the most popular OEM in EVs, we reached this agreement in the States and also in Europe. So it's possible to fund cars, not only loans. It's possible to do leases in EVs because some people fear about the EV, the battery life, and all these things. But well, those are problems that we already find some solutions. So the other thing that worries me a bit is EVs demand still depends too much on government subsidies. So there is still technological problems. OEM need to keep going and gain scale in order to make the EV vehicles more affordable, because if we depend for buying EVs in government subsidies, this is not sustainable for the whole market. This is sustainable to start with the market, but it's not sustainable for the whole market, so we still have a problem there. So having said that, I don't see a particular problem for the banks to fund EVs, even to fund charging stations, provided that the charging stations become more standardized. And this probably is something that we need in order for being more convenient of this. So you as municipalities and regions, you have your tasks here. You are the ones who basically do all the permissions for doing all these things, yeah? So the buildings and the charging stations and all these things. Those are, from a bank point of view, I could say that Santander and the financial system in Europe has enough capital, liquidity, and appetite to fund these kind of things. So this shouldn't be a problem, provided that we find the technical solutions that are needed. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, José Antonio, for being with us today. He will also be leaving, but it has been very interesting to hear also from the perspective of a financial institution how they see the investments in the energy efficiency sector. I would say also the challenges in a bigger picture, but also when we are talking about the local communities. We have seen, the commitment of Banco Santander and some of the solutions that they have used maybe in other countries, and that they can be, hopefully replicated here. I think in a couple of minutes we should have the next speaker here. There is traffic today in Brussels due to the rain as well, but I would like also to take the opportunity that, to have here from the finance sector, but also in CINEA, we have now a call, which is now open, which will be supporting projects, on the uptake of energy efficiency and renewable energy solutions, and is still open to the 21st, I think it's in November, 16th of November, sorry. So it's also that, I encourage you to check a little bit on what we are offering and see whether we can support, your next projects and investments. So maybe what I can, unless he's right, I mean, he's due. Apparently he's just 200 meters from here, so we wait, or I will. I'm waiting to see what my colleagues are telling me. I think he's about due to arrive. But if not, what I can do in the meantime, not to withhold the meeting later, I can give you a little bit on the practical issues after this opening ceremony. So after the meeting that we have, after the meeting we have now, we will move into several sessions showcasing a sample of projects and initiatives supported by the European Commission. and other related initiatives under the European Investment Bank ELENA initiative. And there will be 3 parallel thematic strands. So maybe he has just arrived, so that's good. We know how stressful it can be to arrive in Zaventem with a rainy day and, having to reach the center of Brussels. But I would like to introduce, Josko Klisovic. He's the president of the City Assembly of Zagreb. He's also the rapporteur for the Commission Environment Committee of the region. So thank you very much, because you are going to give us the final speech of this opening ceremony, and I'm sure it's going to be as much as interesting as the other they have been. So thank you, and you just can come here. I come here, everybody has come to the stand, so maybe.
Thank you very much, and I don't know how to say how I'm sorry that I was a bit late, but this was because of the airplane and the terrible rain in Brussels, which made the traffic jam even worse than we are used to here in Brussels. So, as you know, I'm a president of the City Assembly of Zagreb and member of the Committee of Regions, and I will speak from that perspective. From the perspective of the Committee of the Regions, I have to say that we positioned ourselves very well in the business of implementation of Green Deal, primarily through a couple of initiatives like a Green Deal going local initiative, which we care very much about, and, for example, like involvement in this initiative, Covenant of Mayors, and other initiatives which were started by European Commission. We, in the Committee of Regions, support greatly EU ambitions and European Commission ambitions with regard to the European Green Deal, because we think that's the way how to answer in the right way, how to respond to the challenges of the time, and how to improve the quality of life of our people, our citizens, and make sure that they live in decarbonized, resilient territories with low pollution levels and greater social cohesion. So we joined this initiative, as many other initiatives, in order really to boost, to speed up the implementation of Green Deal. We are living, and all of us are living, in a time of crisis, subsequent and interconnected crisis, which somehow reshaped our priorities. But we, at the local level, at the regional level, are at the front of the all these kind of battles, and we are the closest to the citizens, and we answer them first. And that's why we carry really responsibility. We cannot just disregard it, and we are very much interested to implement Green Deal, to achieve the targets in the right way, because this is the only way that we survive politically on the ground. Citizens first will hold us responsible, and then the government, and then the rest of the crew. Don't forget that European Green Deal is implemented primarily at the local level. 80% of it is implemented by local and regional authorities. So we are not that well capacitated really to implement it fully. So that's why we need additional support by our governments of member states, and by the European Union itself. And we know what needs to be done in order to speed up the energy transition and to achieve climate targets. We really do know. For example, we are trying to boost as much as possible local renewable energy production, particularly through energy communities. Then we are trying to enhance building insulation to combat energy poverty. We are subsidizing as much as we can fossil fuels with renewable heating. And what we want is to update our economic and urban planning to curtail overall resource consumption. So most of us, we understand that EU legislation is moving down to the member states level at the moment. And in order to accelerate really the implementation of the Green Deal, we need to execute concrete projects. So implementation is absolutely the key. And at the local level, as I said, we implement 80% of it, but we really encounter barriers, hurdles, obstacles, which we can't resolve ourselves. We can't remove them ourselves. So we need assistance. And what are the three main obstacles we face at the local and regional level? The first is inadequate financing. There is definitely enough money for implementation of the Green Deal. The second is we have a limited staff. And the third, very weak multi-level governance system. So I will try to speak of these three. So finances, skillful staff, and multi-level governance system. On finances, let me say that in our view, key role is to be played by a multi-annual financial framework. Many EU initiatives like this one here create framework for cities and regions which are willing to implement Green Deal objectives. However, initiatives often go no further than political pledges. The Committee of Regions has stressed that this requires for political pledges need to be better connected via MFF with implementation mechanisms and direct funding. This is very important. When you have political commitment and you pledge yourself and you don't really support it by finances, then these are just empty words. And there is all saying put your money where your mouth are. Or this is basically what we are requesting. No more commitments unless you are ready to reflect these commitments in financial documents such as multi-annual financial framework. This is the only way how to really implement it. That's why we see MFF as a backbone of implementation of European Green Deal. And the Commission itself acknowledged that the annual investment gap to meet the objectives of the Green Deal is over 620 billion euros. 620 billion euros gap between our commitments and the money which we are ready to invest to really execute these commitments. And the loss we encounter because we do not implement them, it's 55 billion per year. Again, European Commission estimates. So therefore, Committee of Regions calls for environment and climate policies to be fully integrated into EU budgetary, economic and social action. And MFF should become a key mechanism. So the mechanism which should really reconcile all differences between different policies. And we see them at the local level when we need to implement them. So horizontal, somehow, integration of all policies under the same umbrella of European deal is something we are very much in favor of. And let me now turn to skills. When you have a staff in your city, as I have in city administration of Zagreb, capital of Croatia, all of them are really very busy and they do their job to the best of their ability. Then you come with some new modern set of policies and set of priorities they should implement. They come to you and say, look, but we are not trained, we are not educated for such policies. This is very nice. We are very much in favor of that, but we are not ready to do it unless we receive certain training. So we really lack competent and trained staff for these advanced policies of our time. And I hope that everybody is aware of that. We have some staff, but not enough to implement such a huge requirements from the Green Deal. So that's where we need training and technical assistance because we need to train Green Deal workforce of tomorrow. This is really something important for us. And the Net Zero in the Industry Act will support the establishment of Net Zero academies. These academies should also support the training of staff from local and regional authorities. What is also important is to make sure that the skilled workforce reaches small and medium-sized local and regional communities. Because in capital cities like Zagreb, we do have some competent staff to implement Green Deal priorities. But in smaller towns, in municipalities, they really don't have them. So training must reach even those communities because they are important in implementation phase. And the regional agencies are very important in this context as well, because they do have some competent staff. Initiatives like Manage Energy play a key role in this, to really better prepare our people for implementation. And as I said, local and regional authorities are closest to the citizens, and that's why they are very important. Now I'm going to speak on the third problem we have, multi-level governance. So when I say multi-level, I think local, regional, I think national, and I think European level. We know that we have currently in place a multi-level governance system, but that system did not really match our expectations. So it needs to be improved, it needs to be updated, it needs to really take into consideration experiences we already have in implementation of Green Deal. So one of the main examples which shows that something is not right is Article 11 of governance regulations. And that's the article which says that government should consult with the local and regional authorities on national energy and climate plans. This is very nice, but not sufficient, because when they come to us, our own governments of member states, and say you should do this, this, and that, then we look at them and say, okay, this is nice, but do I have enough skillful staff to do it? Do I have enough resources to do it? How am I going to do it? Will you explain it to me? Then it's a moment of silence. So it doesn't go that way, obviously. So what I'm advocating, and I put it in my opinion on a future Green Deal governance, is that both sides, national governments and local authorities, have the right to instigate, not just consultations, but even more than that, to speak on the issues of the day which are important for implementation of the Green Deal. And when I say that local authorities can instigate such discussions, I think that they should have a right to do it from the very beginning of the process. When we define the policy, when we define our targets and goals, but not to be consulted at the very end of the process. Because once they are consulted at the end of the process, they do not have any impact on the decision making. And they should implement something which was defined by somebody else, which is quite difficult, you know, on the ground. So what we really want, the way how to improve multi-level governance system is to engage local and regional authorities up front. It's from the very beginning, when we really talk about policies, when we shape them, before we decide on them. And that will be very important for us at the local level, because we will feel that this is that we are part of the process, and the final product is our own product as well. And then, in the process of negotiating and defining policies, we can say what we need to implement these policies. Otherwise, they will remain the letters on the paper, you know, and won't do any difference in practice, in reality, in lives of our citizens. And we are not interested in that exercise. We are interested in the exercise which make our life better, which makes difference in our lives. This is with regard to the national government. But then, again, many decisions are taken here in Brussels. Local authorities do not have access to these decision-making tables. So my proposal was that Committee of Regions delegate a representative who can voice our own opinion in the discussions with the Commission, with the Member States, or European Parliament on these issues. In that way, we know that we can't be represented with the many cities and regions, but that's why we have European Committee of Regions. So if we are allowed to participate in policy shaping, in target setting, then believe me, it will be much easier to implement them on the ground. And then we can always say what we need for implementation, and we can insist on consistency between different targets and different policies. We managed to have some consistency between energy and climate policy. But what about economy? We need to green the European semester. Governments take very seriously the European semester. unless it's greened, you know, it's in certain conflict with the energy or climate policies, we won't succeed. Because on the ground, at the local level, when we need to implement, we cannot implement energy policy which requires us to do one thing, and then economic policy which requires us to do another thing. This conflict. You know, so to avoid that kind of conflict between different targets and policies, local authorities, which are implementing agencies, should be involved from the very beginning in drafting and defining our policies, targets, and goals. To conclude, a couple of examples from my city of Zagreb with regard to private financing and how we use European funds. So I think these are quite good examples. For example, we have now idea to issue green bonds which, by which we are going to finance sustainable energy projects. The first tranche of these bonds is planned at 50 million euros and will provide capital to further the city's sustainable energy agenda, manifesting a commitment to green financing for achieving its energy and climate goals. The green bonds issuance represents a strategic approach to engage investors in supporting Zagreb's transition towards a more sustainable energy infrastructure. We know that we can't find enough money in the state or in city budget, so that's why we want to really engage investor community. Green bonds are one of the ways how we are going to engage investor community, so the private, basically the private business. The second thing we are doing now is we are issuing, recently we have issued a public tender for power purchase agreement. So the idea is to contract the people for installation of photovoltaic facilities on 16 public buildings. Overall idea is to get at least 2,000 megawatt of power and to decrease the greenhouse gas emission of 470 tons per year. We think that this is kind of practical step which can really contribute to decrease of CO2 emissions. Then we use ELENA fund very much. So we think this is the excellent technical assistance program because it focuses on actual preparation for large-scale capital-intensive projects with a contractual clause that the project beneficiary must start the investments that were prepared by ELENA technical assistance grant. This is very good because you can't change your mind in the middle of the process, and we always have that kind of problem. So in this case, we don't have that problem. This is very important. We already completed one of the projects under this scheme of ELENA scheme, the public lighting system, which we are very proud of. We started the second one, energy efficiency projects valued at 85 million euros, and we want to renovate about 50 public buildings. Upon completion, these buildings are expected to emit 80% less CO2 and achieve 70% of increase of 70% energy savings. The renovation will contribute to generating more than 14 gigawatt of renewable energy annually, eliminating 8,070 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent and saving of 29 gigawatt of energy each year. So, I mean, this is very important for us that all the projects we really finance or try to find public and private financing are really contributing to our overall goals. In Croatia, we very much use the Solidarity Fund. Why? Because Zagreb was hit very hardly by earthquake 3 years ago. So we now invest very much in schools, in public buildings, in transport infrastructure, making these facilities energy efficient, because they were not previously. So unfortunately, earthquake was that factor which speed up the process to go to more energy efficient buildings. And I exceeded my time. Okay, then I will stop here and I will be open to any question from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Josko, for giving your perspective on the difficulties that some local organizations find in greening their investments, in greening their cities. I mean, you have referred to the need to have a match between the objectives of the European Union Green Deal and the budget, and I cannot more than agree. You referred to the skills and the need the people to receive training, but also very importantly of the need of having a coordinated approach, a planning approach between the European Union authorities, the national authorities, and of course the local authorities. I mean, Zagreb is one of the 100 climate neutral cities under the European Union mission, Climate Neutral and Smart Cities mission. And you have told us how the effort that you are deploying, mixing European Union funds, private funds. And in fact, you know, Zagreb, I would say, is a great example of leadership, especially as the city is making, you know, a lot of efforts to keep its community engaged and involved in this transition. So thank you. So with this speaker, we finish this opening ceremony. I would like to warmly thank all of them for being here and for their insightful speeches. So thank you very much. Just some logistics things. So after the coffee break that I hope you will give you some energy to continue with the other sessions, we'll have, we will break up in 3 sessions. The first strand will showcase initiatives working on cities and regions at the center of the clean energy transition and climate adaptation. The second strand with projects on mobilizing sustainable energy investments in the public and private sectors. And finally, the third strand with projects on emerging approaches to boost energy efficiency finance. So in any way, there are copies of the agenda on the floor. Also, you can check the agenda online, and you will see in which room they take place or which is your link. There will be also a lunch break and an afternoon coffee, during which we invite you to keep the discussions and the network. It cannot be a better place that to see your counterparts and to exchange your challenges, your solutions, and your best practice. There are also, as I said, a number of stands outside in the welcome area. We have one from the European Investment Bank. We have our own of CINEA, the Committee of the Regions, and the Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy Europe, and many more. And then after the different sessions, we will have a closing session scheduled at 5. Aneta Williams from CINEA, Iro Ailio from DG Energy, together with Frederic Boyer from the Covenant of Mayor Office Europe, will offer you some closing remarks and highlights from the day. So I would like just now to close because we are running late. I would like to wish you a successful conference and hope that is enlightening for taking inspirational ideas from successful cases with you. So thank you very much for your attention. Have a good break and coffee.